My mom taught me a lesson about trust, and my cheating ex is about to learn it. My mother taught me that love was a weapon. Not the soft, gentle kind, but the sort with an edge sharp enough to bleed you dry. I learned that lesson in the 3 days after she killed the boy who used to hurt me. 3 days after I found his bright blue baseball cap sitting on her workbench in the garage. It was just there, nestled between a can of WD-40 and a stack of old newspapers, a vibrant splash of colour in the grey concrete tomb. The air was thick with the smell of gasoline and something else, something coppery and sweet that clung to the back of my throat. The single bulb overhead hummed, casting our shadows long and distorted on the oil-stained floor. That cap confirmed a suspicion that had been growing in my gut like a cold stone. My mother, the woman who smoothed my hair and kissed my forehead, who carefully sliced the crusts from my sandwiches, she had taken Jurek. She had silenced him, and I was too terrified to ask her how. When I stumbled back into the house, the cap feeling like a lead weight in my hand, she was there. She wrapped me in a hug that felt less like comfort and more like a cage. It went on for too long, her arms squeezing the air from my lungs. I was sure she could feel the frantic, bird-like flutter of my heart against my ribs. "Oh, my sweet Sora," she murmured into my hair. "I'm so happy I could finally tell you." I just blinked, my body rigid in her embrace. "I hated keeping this part of me from you," she said, her voice impossibly light. She finally let go and moved toward the laundry room, tossing the towels she'd used to dry her hair into the hamper. It was so normal. So terrifyingly, utterly normal. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mouth dry, my mind a screaming void. I kept waiting for the punchline. For her to laugh, to snatch the hat from my hand and say she'd found it lying in the gutter. But the laugh never came. That was a Friday. By Monday, I understood. This was my life now. As I was pulling on my sneakers for school, she knelt before me, tying the laces in a perfect, neat bow. She handed me my backpack, and her hand found mine as we walked to the front door. Her fingers were cool against my skin. On the threshold, just before the morning sun could touch me, her grip tightened. "Now, Sora, I hope this goes without saying. You cannot tell a single soul about Jurek, understand?" Her voice was sugar-sweet, but her eyes held a chilling seriousness. That should be easy, I thought numbly. I didn't actually know what happened. "Okay," I whispered, the word barely a puff of air. "I mean it." Her fingers squeezed, a subtle, painful pressure. "No one. Not your teacher, not your little friends, not even Lyra. Things could get very bad for both of us." "Both of us?" My voice cracked. A sad, beautiful smile touched her lips. "Yes, sweet girl, both of us. You see, now that you know, you're what they call an accessory. If anyone finds out, we could both go to prison, and we wouldn't want that, would we?" Concern softened the edges of her face, framing her impossibly long eyelashes. The world tilted. The floor felt like it was falling away beneath me. Tears welled up hot and fast. "I don't want to go to jail," I wailed, the sound ugly and raw in the quiet morning air. A neighbour, Mr. Henderson, looked up from his mailbox across the street, his brow furrowed. My mother's eyes widened, a flash of pure panic. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a bright, brittle cheerfulness. "Sorry," she chirped, waving at him. "Just threatening her with police action if she doesn't clean her room. You know how it is." She forced a laugh, a sound like glass shattering, and Mr. Henderson, bless his oblivious heart, just smiled and waved back. The moment he was inside his house, she leaned down, her face inches from mine. The perfume she wore, usually so comforting, now smelled cloying, like wilting flowers on a grave. Her presence was a wave of ice. "Sora, do not ever do that again. Do you understand me?" she seethed, the words a venomous hiss. Her grip on my hand was bone-crushing now. Pain shot up my arm, sharp and electric. I nodded frantically, unable to speak through the sob caught in my throat. "Yes, Mummy," I whimpered. Instantly, her grip loosened. The mask of the loving mother slid back into place. "Good, my sweet girl." She kissed the top of my head. "I'll see you after school. Have a wonderful day." She leaned against the doorframe, a perfect picture of maternal affection, and watched me walk toward the bus stop. Every step was mechanical. My mind was a whirlwind of images. The blue cap, my mother's dead eyes, the bars of a prison cell. What had she done to him? What else was she capable of doing? What was she capable of doing to me? I turned the corner, and a flash of color broke through the grey fog of my thoughts. Rainbow-painted nails, a jangle of silver bracelets. Sora Bean, Lyra yelled, running toward me. Her arms wrapped around me, and the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo was so overwhelming, so normal, that it broke something inside me. She was already chattering away, a mile a minute, about some TV show she watched while she was homesick, something about a detective named Olivia Benson. It was halfway through a sentence that she finally noticed my silence. "Sora, what's wrong?" she asked, her head tilted, her bright, curious eyes searching my face. And for the second time that morning, I started to cry. Not just quiet tears, but huge, shuddering sobs that tore their way out of my chest. I buried my face in my hands, trying to muffle the awful sound. Sora Lyra whispered, her voice tight with alarm. She pulled me into another hug, holding me steady as I shook. "It's okay. It's going to be okay. Should I call your mum?" "No." The word ripped out of me, sharp and terrified. Lyra flinched back, her eyes wide. I couldn't lie to her, not to Lyra. Wiping my face with the back of my hand, I took a ragged breath. I need to talk to your mum." Lyra stared at me for a long moment, her usual bubbly confidence gone, replaced by a quiet gravity. Then she just nodded. "Okay, let's go." She took my hand, and we walked away from the bus stop, back the way I came, toward her house. The silence between us was heavy, but her hand in mine was a small, warm anchor in a world that was rapidly sinking. When we reached her house, Lyra pushed the front door open without knocking and immediately called out, "Mum." Her mother appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Confusion creased her face. "Girls, what's going on? Aren't you supposed to be at school?" "Sora said she needed to talk to you," Lyra said, her voice small. As soon as her mum's gaze settled on my tear-streaked face, she rushed forward, her own face etched with concern, and pulled me into a gentle hug. "Sora, honey, what's the matter?" I hesitated, glancing at Lyra, who was watching us with wide, frightened eyes. Her mum understood immediately. "Lyra, sweetie, could you go get Sora a glass of juice from the kitchen?" Lyra nodded, relief washing over her face, and hurried away. Her mom leaned in closer, her voice a low whisper. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You can tell me." I swallowed hard, trying to force the words out. I think... My voice was a choked whisper. She just waited, her expression patient and kind. It gave me the courage I needed. "I think my mom hurt Jorik," I finally breathed. Her face didn't change. Not a flicker of surprise, not a hint of disbelief. It was as if she'd been expecting this. "Why do you think that, Sora?" The words tumbled out in a frantic, hushed rush. I found his hat. In our garage. And my mum. She said she was happy she didn't have to hide anymore. She said I couldn't tell anyone, or I'd be an accessory, and I would go to jail too because I knew. The tears started again, hot and thick. This time, her expression did change. It was fast, a shadow passing over her features, but I saw it. Pure, unadulterated anger flashed in her eyes before being quickly suppressed. Just then, Lyra returned with a glass of orange juice and a handful of crumpled tissues. Here, Sora. Let's go watch a movie, girls, Lyra's mom said, her voice impossibly calm. Lyra, let Sora pick. What about school? I asked, my voice still thick. I'll call them. We're going to have a girls' day. She gave me a small, reassuring smile. Is that all right? Yeah, I'm never going back. Lyra cheered, already pulling out a stack of Barbie DVDs. We'll see about that, Catherine, her mum said, a hint of her usual humour returning. She walked to the front door, and I heard the distinct heavy sounds of the locks being thrown. 1, 2, and then a third higher up. A deep, resonant thud that seemed to seal us in. She came back into the living room and picked up the cordless phone from its cradle. I'm just going to my office to call the school. I'll be right back. Do not, under any circumstances, answer the door for anyone. Okay, girls? We both nodded. She opened the door that led to the basement and disappeared down the stairs. I didn't have the energy to pick a movie, so Lyra put in The Princess and the Pauper. When the opening song began, she started singing along, but I couldn't bring myself to join in. Are you sure you're okay? She asked, nudging my shoulder. I nodded. Just mum stuff. I'll be fine. She shrugged and turned her attention back to the screen. About 20 minutes into the movie, a violent banging erupted from the front door. It was so loud, so sudden, the whole room seemed to shake with it. We both jumped, our hearts leaping into our throats. Who is that? I whispered, my blood turning to ice. Lyra scrambled up and ran to the kitchen. I watched in disbelief as she grabbed a large chef's knife from the wooden block by the stove. What are you doing? I hissed. I don't know. It's what Olivia Benson would do, she whispered back, her eyes wide and fixed on the door. And then a voice cut through the wood. Sora? Sora? Open this door right now. My mother. A tremor started in my hands and spread through my entire body. I stood up, moving toward the door as if pulled by an invisible string. Sora! No! Lyra Whisper shouted, grabbing my arm. My mum said not to open the door. But it's my mum, I said, the words tasting like ash. Okay, just wait, Lyra said quickly, her mind racing. Let me get my mum first. We can't even undo the top lock anyway. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen as she sent a text. A moment later, we heard the faint ping of a notification from the basement. Just wait a second, Lyra said, trying to sound reassuring. I'm sure it's fine. As if on cue, we both turned our heads back to the front door. The banging had stopped. The silence that replaced it was somehow worse, heavy and menacing. Lyra crept to the door, peering through the long, narrow windows that flanked it. She's not there, Lyra said, her voice laced with confusion. What? Where did she go? I asked, pushing past her to see for myself. The porch was empty. The street was quiet. It was like she had vanished into thin air. Lyra sent another text. We heard another ping from downstairs. Maybe she's on the phone with the school, I offered weakly. She'd text me back if she was, Lyra said, glancing over her shoulder toward the basement door, the knife still clutched in her hand. We should go check on her, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I gently took the knife from her hand. She didn't resist. She just nodded and followed me to the basement door. As I pulled it open, a sound drifted up the stairs. It wasn't talking. It was a low, guttural noise, wet and pained. It reminded me of the stray dog my mother had hit with her car last year, the way it had whimpered and moaned on the side of the road. As we crept down the wooden steps, the sound grew clearer, and I realized with a sickening lurch that it wasn't an animal at all. The basement came into view. It was a large, finished space, a cozy office with a desk and bookshelves on one side, a den with plush couches on the other. And on one of those couches, Lyra's mum was tied up. Mum Lyra screamed, a sound of pure terror that ripped through the quiet air. She flew down the remaining stairs, rushing to her mother's side. "Oh my God," I yelled, right behind her. Lyra was frantically pulling at the thick phone cord binding her mother's wrists and ankles. "Girls," her mum whimpered, her voice weak and slurred. "It's not safe. Go, get help, please." Her eyes were glassy, and a dark, matted patch of hair was plastered to the side of her head, a crimson stain spreading across the pale grey fabric of the couch cushion beneath her. Tears streamed down Lyra's face as she wrestled with the knots. "I'm not leaving you," she sobbed. "Now isn't that just the sweetest thing? True mother-daughter loyalty." The voice came from the shadows behind us. It was my mother's voice, but it was wrong. It was sharp and brittle, laced with a terrifying, manic energy. Lyra and I turned around slowly. She stood at the bottom of the stairs wearing the same clothes from that morning. But she was different. Her hair, normally so perfect, was a wild, frizzy mess. Her mascara was smeared in dark streaks beneath her eyes. And her eyes, they weren't my mother's eyes. They were wide, vacant, and utterly insane. "Mom," I whispered. "Sora, I gave you one task." "One simple task," she said, her voice rising with each word. "And the second I'm not looking, you run and tell?" We just talked about this. I was paralyzed, unable to move, unable to breathe. "Your school called when you didn't show up," she rambled, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "I thought that was strange, since I watched you walk to the bus stop. So I thought, where could my sweet Sora have gone?" And then it hit me. Of course, you had to tell someone, and who else would it be but your very best friend? She let out a wild, cackling laugh. Lyra's mum groaned again, and Lyra moved to shield her. "So, I get here, and what happens? You don't open the door? For your own mother," she shrieked, taking a step closer. I couldn't help but flinch back. So I had to think, and then I remembered. That nice Mrs. Elwood has a little side door for her therapy patients. To keep the crazies away from her precious daughter, right? "You never can be too careful," she screamed, her head snapping toward the couch. "Well, couldn't keep all the crazies out, could you?" She laughed again, a high, unhinged sound that echoed off the concrete walls. In one swift, terrifying movement, she crossed the room. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for a blow that never came. Instead, I heard Lyra cry out in pain. My eyes flew open. "Lyra," I screamed. My mother had a fistful of Lyra's curly hair, yanking her head back as she started to drag her toward the side door, which now stood wide open to the backyard. Lyra's mum thrashed on the couch, her cries weak and desperate. "Please, Lyra, it's only fair," my mother chirped in her sing-song voice. "You stole my daughter, so I'm stealing yours. An eye for an eye. But don't you worry," she cooed at Lyra's mother, "with the brick I introduced to your temple. I doubt you'll be alive long enough to miss her." Lyra was sobbing. Her mum was growing terrifyingly quiet, and my mother was almost out the door with my best friend. A cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. I had to do something. "Mummy," I said, my voice small and quiet. She froze, her back still to me. "I'm sorry, Mummy. I was scared." I took a slow step toward her. "You were right. Jorik, he deserved to be hurt for being mean to me. And Lyra's mom deserved it too, for trying to take me away from you." She turned slowly, her wild eyes searching my face. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, cutting clean paths through the smeared makeup. Her hand was still tangled in Lyra's hair. "Lyra," I continued, my voice gaining strength. She was bossy, always telling me what to do. I'm so tired of it. I saw the flicker of betrayal and hurt in Lyra's eyes. Maybe we need to hurt her too," I whispered. A slow, wide grin spread across my mother's face. She let go of Lyra, who crumpled to the floor, and rushed to me, wrapping me in a suffocating embrace. "Oh, my sweet, sweet Sora. I knew you'd understand. I could never stay mad at you. I'm so sorry we fought." She sobbed into my hair. I hugged her back, my arms wrapping around her waist as tightly as I could. Because I knew it would be the last time. "I'm sorry too, Mummy," I whispered against her scratchy sweater. And then I plunged the kitchen knife I was still holding deep into her stomach. Her whole body went rigid. Her eyes flew wide with shock and a terrifying, profound betrayal. She looked down at her cream-coloured sweater, at the dark red stain that was already blossoming there, spreading like a fatal flower. My own sobs started then, ragged and uncontrollable, but my grip on the handle of the knife never wavered. She looked back up at me, her mouth opening as if to say something, but only a wet, gurgling sound came out. "I love you, Mummy. I love you, Mummy. I love you, Mummy. I love you, Mummy." I chanted the words over and over, a desperate, broken prayer, until her weight became too much and she collapsed onto the cold basement floor. The crying wouldn't stop. My hand shook so violently I could barely hold Lyra's discarded phone as I dialed the only numbers I could think of. 911. What is your emergency? 10 years later. Don't wait up, I called out, grabbing my keys and phone from the small bowl by the door. "Oh, I won't be," Lyra's voice floated out from her bedroom. A moment later, she appeared in the living room doorway, a shimmering vision in a silver sequin dress, applying a final coat of lip gloss. "Are you sure you don't want to come?" "Last big frat party of the semester," she said, fluffing her hair with fingers that were, even now, tipped with rainbow polish. As tempting as sticky floors and cheap beer sounds, I'll pass." "I told Ren I'd meet him for coffee," I replied, snapping my purse shut. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "I still cannot believe you're even speaking to him after he literally cheated on you with his TA, but you do you, boo." "It's just to hear him out," I laughed. "Closure. No interest in a reunion tour." "Fine, but don't be out too late. We have brunch with my mum tomorrow, and if you're tired, I will tell her you're getting back together with him just to watch her destroy you with a single disappointed look." She cackled, grabbing her own purse. Message received. "I promise, this is strictly a closure-based operation," I said as we stepped out into the hallway. We said our goodbyes and headed in opposite directions, Lyra to another party and me to the quiet coffee shop down the street. After everything, Lyra's mum not only survived, but she took me in without a second thought. She was in the hospital for months, recovering from a traumatic brain injury, but she came back. She even wrote a book about it all, a bestseller that paid for this apartment. Lyra had a nasty concussion, but she came to just as the first responders were flooding the basement. The second she saw me, standing there covered in, well, she just cried and held me until they had to pull us apart. She knew I hadn't meant what I said. She was, however, surprised to learn that I really did think she was a little bossy sometimes. My mother, she survived too. They found her guilty. And it turned out Gorik wasn't the first. He wasn't even the second. My biological father was the first. Her list was much, much longer than anyone could have imagined. Multiple life sentences. No chance of parole. Lyra's mom asked more than once if I wanted to go to the trial or see her in prison. I always said no. I can't look at her face without seeing the monster she tried to make me. I'm close with my dad's family now. They found me after the news broke. It was slow going, but they're my family. We're all spending New Year's together, me, Lyra, her mum, my grandparents. Life is good, but my mother's ghosts are never far. They whisper to me in quiet moments. I see her eyes in my own reflection sometimes. I do my best to ignore them. I reached the coffee shop, its windows warm and inviting against the cool night air. Through the glass I could see Ren was already there. He was at a small table nursing a cappuccino and leaning in close to the waitress, his smile wide and predatory. Shameless. I pushed the door open, a small bell chiming overhead, and walked to his table. I stood there waiting until he finally looked up and noticed me. He blinked, the charming smile faltering for a second. "Sora. Hey, you made it. Sit. Actually," I said, giving him my sweetest, most disarming smile. "It's such a nice night. How about we go for a walk?" I held out my gloved hand. His eyes lit up. He saw a second chance. He downed the rest of his drink in one gulp, grabbed his coat, and stood up. "A walk sounds great, babe. Let's go," he said, with a wink that made my stomach turn. I took his hand, my fingers lacing through his, and led him out of the shop. We walked in silence for a block before he started his pre-rehearsed speech. "Look, Sora, I love you. I'm so sorry. She came onto me, I swear. I know that sounds pathetic, but it's the truth. The whole time, I was just wishing it was you. I messed up, I know. I wasn't listening." The words were just noise. My decision had been made before I ever left the apartment. "Hey, Ren," I interrupted. He stopped talking, looking at me with those pathetic puppy dog eyes. "I forgive you," I said, my smile unwavering. "It's okay." The tension visibly drained from his shoulders. "Oh, thank God, baby. I promise I will never, ever hurt you again." I let out a soft laugh. "I'm not worried about that." He gave me a lazy, confident grin. I glanced around. The street was empty. The sound of the frat party was a distant, muffled thump down the hill. Everyone was there. No one was here. Perfect. "Do you want to know why I'm not worried?" I asked, leaning in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. He nodded, his brow furrowing slightly in confusion. "It's because of trust. Trust is the foundation of everything, isn't it? Without trust, we have nothing." The words felt familiar on my tongue, an old and bitter echo. "So I guess, Ren, I just have one question for you." His breath hitched as I slid my hand from his and reached into my coat pocket. The movement was smooth, practiced. The familiar weight of the kitchen knife settled into my palm. In one fluid motion, I brought it up, the cold steel pressing into the soft, vulnerable skin of his throat. His eyes went wide with terror as he finally saw me. "Do you trust me? Do you trust me?"